Welcome to the Mindful Living Podcast. I'm your host, Athea Davis. Are you ready to become the person everyone loves, including yourself? Imagine being filled with purpose, joy, and focused energy every single day. I guide kids to gain their inner calm and adults to spark their inner child. Each week, I will give you fun, practical, and relatable, mindfully infused inspiration, insights, and information that you can directly apply in your life, family, and school or business. So, let's get started. Hey there, and welcome back to Mindful Living with me, your host, Athea Davis. You are listening to episode 61, Helping Our Kids Cultivate Peace, Love, and Empathy. I had the opportunity to chat with New York Times bestselling author Susan Verde. And before I give a formal introduction to Susan and all the amazing work that she's doing, I couldn't really think of a better way than to open up this topic than to share a couple of stories. You know, when we think about peace and love and compassion, it's amazing, right? Like, it's something that we all want. We all desire. We all really want to practice it. And when we do an inventory, right, of how we are personally showing up, in our own life practicing this, we realize really quickly how challenging these things, these, concepts, these ideas, these feelings, this, vision of what peace and love and empathy are, that it is really challenging to practice. But it's not impossible, and it's something that, with a routine, like a mindful routine with intention, we can cultivate, these things inside of us. We can cultivate that ultimate peace and love beyond, ourselves and for our family, but for all of our human brothers and sisters, and empathy as well. And for kids, we see them doing kind of like zigzag, or maybe like a roller coaster, right? You may see them do it when they are really wanting something, right? Or maybe they just have that disposition. And, if you have kids yourself, you realize that this is quite an interesting these are interesting practices, traits to try to cultivate in our kids, whether you're teaching them or raising them, or you work with kids in any way. One, you definitely want to tune into this episode because you're going to gain a lot of value. And two, you realize that through the developmental process, right, whether they're preschool, school age, tween, teen, young adult, that they're varying stages of how they show, these traits of peace, love, and empathy through, one, just how they talk to themselves and talk to others and their families, but also it's exhibited through their friendships and how they interact with others in activities. And so I wanted to share a couple of stories. One of the values that we have at our school, and for you tuning in to the first time, I'm a mindfulness educator at KIPP, Texas. I work at a brand new school, KIPP Journey, and I work with elementary and middle school age kids, teaching them mindfulness practices. Love it. It's amazing and super hard too, as I was getting at, because developmentally, and there's just so many factors that we have to look at. But, for kids to understand this, one, some get it really quickly. Some just don't. But I know through my training in yoga and mindfulness as an educator as well, that when we want to cultivate any kind of character trait, any trait within ourselves, we need a system in place to develop it.
And part of taking a mindfulness class helps us develop that. Part of having a mindfulness practice at home, a yoga practice, a mindset practice at home, helps us develop that. So, one of the values that we have is showing love for the younger ones and for the middle school, my middle schoolers too. One of the things I see a lot with the younger students, and it's incredibly sweet, and it was not like this in the beginning of the school year because these are all brand new students that have never been at our KIPP school, and they had to be taught and shown, and there has to be a routine, and we practice this as a culture of showing love. And what I've seen over the last several months, I mean, clearly this was pre COVID-19 when we were on campus, but what I have seen is I've seen the kids just develop such connection and love and empathy towards others. So I had a student really upset. I mean, with the little ones, they get upset, not being able to tie their shoes, and everybody's got their shoes tied and they're ready to go online and they're ready to transition to the next class. And this one particular student just felt, just upset, that they couldn't get their shoes tied and they were going to be late. And one of the students that did finish tying her shoes offered to help. So sweet. And she walked over there and just, gave her a hug and showed the student some love and said, hey, you know what? It's going to be okay. We're going to do this together. And my heart just melted. Oh my goodness, how sweet. And I think this was a first grader. I can't remember if it was first or kinder. It was a few months ago. So, but I know that occurred through practice, right? And then another quick story I want to share is just personally, like with my older kiddo, he's a teen, and teens are awkward animals. Okay, they're just like a different human as they're going through their finding, of themselves at this age, coming to know who they are in the world in a new way, traveling and growing up in the sense of, becoming, a young adult. So anytime we watch a show together, we've been watching 13 Reasons Why, which is really intense, a lot of important, coming of age topics. And one of the episodes really upset me, and I was just, taken aback. And he offered me a hug, which was super, super sweet. And he generally does that. And I know that part of my practice as a parent has really been trying so hard in everything I do to cultivate that trait or these traits of peace, love, and empathy. And we see that through these actions. And so I want to remind you all out there, when you're working with kids, everything that you say and provide for them, whether through literacy, through conversations, through phone calls, text messages, Zoom meetings, virtual hugs, I guess, right now, that it really does make a difference in helping to build, peace, love, and empathy within themselves. And I'm excited for you to listen to my chat with Susan Verde. And I'm going to go ahead and give a formal intro so we can just dive right in, and you can listen to all the great wisdom and insights that Susan has to share with us today. So, New York Times bestselling author Susan Verde grew up in the heart of Greenwich Village in New York City. Ultimately, she moved to the Hamptons, where she earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's in reading remediation, and became an elementary school teacher for many years. Now, Susan is an author capturing and celebrating the unique experience of children. Her titles include The Museum, The Water Princess, Rock and Roll Soul, and Hey, Wallace Story of Art and Community, and Unstoppable Me. Her instant #1 New York Times bestseller, I Am Human, A Book of Empathy, is part of a best-selling series including I Am Yoga and I Am Peace, and the New York Times bestseller, I Am Love, A Book of Compassion. Her most recent books are The Three Little Yogis and the Wolf Who Lost His Breath, as well as another in the I Am series, I Am One, A Book of Action. Susan's books continue to inspire children, educators, yoga practitioners, and mindful humans alike, helping to cultivate empathy and kindness in all of us. In addition to writing, Susan teaches yoga and mindfulness to kids of all ages. I'm super grateful for Susan's time to be on the show today. I'm excited for you to learn about her books. If you don't have them already, please go stock up. Her I Am series is phenomenal and they are beautifully illustrated and just such a great resource to have these very creative books to help our kids cultivate peace, love, and empathy, in their everyday lives. I do hope you enjoy my chat with Susan Verde here on episode 61, helping our kids cultivate peace, love, and empathy on Mindful Living with Athea Davis. I will see you on the other side of my chat with Susan Verde. Enjoy. Well, I want to welcome you, Susan, to Mindful Living with Athea Davis.
Oh,
Welcome to
thank
the
you.
show. Yes,
Thanks
I'm
for
excited
having
to
me.
have you here. Yes. And, I know right now, as we're recording this episode on the podcast, we're in this defining moment in our history with the current COVID-19 pandemic. And now more than ever, many of us are really searching for tools to help us navigate stress and chaos. But before, we dive into that, I do want to go back into time a little bit.
Sure.
And would really like to introduce my audience to who you are. Many of them may already know who you are and the work that you're doing. But, I love to imagine that we're drinking some Cafe Mojo together, whether that's tea or coffee or whatever it is for you. And I want you to share the version of your story, like Cafe Mojo style, not like bio style, but
Right, got it.
Cafe Mojo style, into becoming a children's book author, particularly in the genre of yoga and mindfulness. What
Yeah.
led you to do that?
Okay, well, I'm holding on to my imaginary decaf latte. Well, only one third decaf, actually. Um, yeah, so it's been a journey for sure. Being a children's book author wasn't actually something I set out to do, when I was sort of kind of in my 20s figuring out my life and all of that stuff. I mean, my story has had many iterations so far. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in New York City in Greenwich Village, and it was a um, it was a wonderful place to grow up because it was
Mm,
just so diverse and so interesting and full of artists and people of different races and colors and sexual orientation and whatever, and it was just
yeah,
this beautiful melting pot, and I really felt it and appreciated it, although it wasn't something that like stood out to me as being that way. It was just what it was.
right.
And so everything felt always very artistic in my life. My dad worked on Wall Street, which wasn't so artistic, but he was also a writer, and my brother was an actor, and my mother was doing all kinds of crazy stuff and had a record company and all this stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, so there was a lot of just creativity flowing all the time. And writing, if we're going to talk about writing, was
Yeah.
something I did like many kids do. I had a diary, I had a journal. English class was my favorite class in school. I didn't totally love school otherwise, but that was a good class. Sort of indifferent to school. Um,
But writing clearly like was an outlet. And
but
here you
writing was
were
an outlet.
around all these,
Yeah,
artistic, creative people growing up.
yeah, and it was, so that was definitely my thing, but it was a thing, just it was my coping skill at that time,
Mm,
because when I was growing up, it was, so I'm Jewish growing up in New York City, so therapy was like part of my life always. But that being said, we didn't really know a lot about mental health the way we kind of do now. So yeah, there was talk therapy and this, that, and the other, but I don't think parents or people paid as much attention to it as they do now. But
right.
I'm kind of getting off track. But yeah, so anyway, so writing was sort of my coping mechanism, and something I did found I did well. I graduated from high school. I went off to college. I
And
didn't
you
know
were
what.
a teacher, right? For some years.
Yeah, so I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I moved back to New York City, and I worked in the music industry for a while, and I was part of like the hip hop culture and all of that.
Really? How
Yeah, I worked for
interesting.
Vibe magazine, and yeah, that whole culture was a huge part of my life. I think a lot of it had to do with my mother's record company, and she was very R&B, hip hop kind of. Those were her artists and things like that.
Wow,
So
how
yeah,
fun.
it was so much fun. I had a wonderful time. But ultimately, I wanted to do something else, and so we had a summer home, like many people, out in the Hamptons, and my mother had a store out here, and I came to work for her and kind of figure out my life, and decided I wanted to go back to school for teaching. I had always loved kids.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it just felt like something I wanted to do. So I did that. I got my bachelor's and master's, and ended up teaching kindergarten for many years out here in Bridgehampton, New York. And
Bless you with those little babies
I
too.
mean, yeah, they're tough, but I love them. Oh my gosh, I love them. And I still see some of my students, I run into them here and there well, I did when they were
Oh, wow.
about, and it's always so amazing, to see what they're doing. And I don't know, I just loved it. But yeah, so that led me there. And the whole time I was a reader, a writer, and a collector of books, and especially picture books. I had a thing for picture books. So while I was teaching, it gave me a sort of legitimate excuse to buy all these books. But I really loved picture books.
Yeah, your I Am series are just beautiful. The words, the illustrations really just pop out to you, like they're alive. I and at this point, that you're looking at that you love connecting to youth, to children, you're loving to teach, writing, creativity, art has clearly been in your blood, in your family, and the environment that you grew up in. What was it that really drew you to the topic of yoga and mindfulness? What role did it play, perhaps personally in your life, that you felt, inspired in some way to write about it, to bring the language and this content and this experience to young minds and to other educators?
Yeah. Well, yoga, my own practice, was something I turned to at various points in my life. I started taking yoga on and off in my 20s with friends and during college and all those things. And it was something I would sometimes walk away from. And then when I was going through something, I would always find myself returning to the mat. And it did so much for me emotionally. And when I was teaching, when I was working with kids, I was really trying to pay attention to their emotional lives, because
Mm,
I had such an interesting group of kids all the time, and they were very diverse emotionally. And it probably had to do with when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily feel like I was given the tools or had the tools or knew that I had the tools to deal with my own emotional life, my own anxiety. So it
mm,
was really important to me that kids feel or felt, certainly the ones I was teaching, supported in that way, because I knew how hard it was to learn or to connect or to put yourself out there when you were struggling with things internally. So yoga for me had been one of the tools that I knew helped me. And when I stopped teaching because I had my kids, and I actually was having trouble getting pregnant. So we decided to do in vitro, and it was hard to balance doing that with the teaching, because I had to keep going into Manhattan. It was a long trip,
mm,
whatever. So it was after I'd had my kids, and I was sort of wanting to continue my relationship with other children and in the school world, in the education world. And I thought, I knew what yoga did for me and what my meditation did for me. And that was something I felt like I could bring to kids. I wasn't seeing it a lot at that point. It's certainly
Right.
grown and become way more important, which I'm thrilled about, and way and more a part of curriculum and things like that. But
Isn't it beautiful to
oh
see the
my gosh,
growth?
I love it. I mean, I really do. I think the mindfulness piece really helped kind of also push the yoga along.
Yes.
There's so much research behind the mindfulness that um, people then started to kind of understand that there was science behind what yoga was doing as well. So both of those things, kind of helped each other get into the school system. As you know, a lot of schools or um, education educational settings need the science, need the research to really justify putting that piece in their curriculum.
Yes, and thankfully the neuroscience, is there and is still
Yeah.
growing to show all of, the reasons why this is important for us, for our kids for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. It makes me incredibly happy to see it.
Eh, and speaking of that, Susan, I'm curious because you said something how, yoga helped you so much in these tough emotional situations that we all find ourselves in. Can you speak to that a little bit? Maybe let's dive into that a little bit more. Is it, you know,
Sure.
is it what kind of emotions or what were some things that you were experiencing that yoga helped you have a better relationship with? Did it just bring more peace and calm perspective? All of it? I'm going to let you speak to that point.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have had a lot of anxiety. As a child and even now, and yoga is one of those things that really helps me kind of quiet my mind. I
Mhm.
found that when I'm paying attention to my breath, when I'm moving my body, it's very hard to let my mind drift to other places. So
Right.
it really, not only does it sort of mentally bring me into the moment, but physically as well. Like, when you feel anxious or worried or scared or whatever it is, a lot of times you feel like you're kind of disconnected from your own being,
Mm,
from your
so
own.
true. Yes.
Yeah, so we feel that kind of floaty, anxious, I'm not grounded feeling. And the physicality of yoga would bring me into my body, and then just learning to really pay attention to my breath and linking it to my movement or whatever it was helped me feel grounded, connected, and frankly less anxious, certainly in that moment. And after doing it for a while, I was able to kind of translate all of those practices just into my everyday life. Just walking along and feeling, or in my house today, for example, and feeling incredibly anxious, I found myself just sitting and breathing, right?
Mm.
Feeling my feet on the ground and just breathing. And even in those moments, it's so helpful. So that's how it helped me. I mean, I still, and that's why I really feel for people, and but kids in particular, who have a lot of anxiety, or whatever emotional thing they're struggling with, because I know what that's like.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Super powerful. And I know many people, there's a high percentage of, as you grow older, and I know it's increasing for teens, and particularly right now in this context of post COVID-19, that many of us are feeling individual anxiety and collective anxiety. So it's a double whammy of anxiety.
Yeah.
That what you mentioned was such a simple practice when you talked about just feeling your feet on the ground, because most of us that have never practiced yoga or mindfulness, we're like, what do you mean my feet on the ground? Like we're in our head all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I have feet and there's the ground, and it feels actually really calming just to focus on that. And I want to point that out for those listening, because sometimes we get these images in our mind when we hear about yoga and mindfulness. If we don't have a personal practice, we're not familiar with it. I know that the awareness is growing, about yoga and mindfulness in many different areas, within the United States, especially in schools, but there's so many of us that don't. And so we have these images that come up and it's like, oh, it's that hard looking gymnastics kind of
Right.
thing that's going on. I'm not going to do that. And the simple thing you just said is so powerful, especially right now. That you don't have to have special equipment, and it's free.
Right, right. It's within you. I mean, you don't have to have skills. You don't have to be able to stand on your head in the middle of a room. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be able to feel your feet or take a
Yeah.
breath. You know what I mean? So you're right, exactly. You don't have to have all those things, and it's not. People definitely have those images of or meditation. People
Right.
imagine, oh, you're sitting very still in a cross-legged position with your, fingers touching your thumbs and your eyes are closed and your brain is empty. And it's like, no, you don't, that's not, it don't,
It
that's,
doesn't work like that. There's
throw
no,
that
yeah.
away. That's not it. Right.
And I
So,
don't want to say like there's nothing wrong with like if you're on your head or you're doing those amazing things,
no, in
that's
fact,
fine
I'm
and
jealous of
amazing
you
too.
if you're on your head. My gosh.
But I
I
don't
can,
want anybody out there thinking like that's all there is to it, or
right.
that you have to, like, that's the only, for me, I like to use this phrase access point. Like it's the only access point to feel calm or to feel peace or to
Right.
lessen perhaps like that unpleasant, intense emotion of anxiety that perhaps many of us are feeling. So I appreciate that, very much that you pointed that out, just
Yeah.
feeling your feet, feeling the ground, and maybe even just saying that to yourself, like, I feel my
Yes.
feet, I feel the ground.
You
Because
know,
that,
I
yeah, go
did a
ahead.
meditation the other day on Instagram, and it was one that one of my yoga teachers kind of does every time we're in her class. As we're breathing, she says, if she has us, say to ourselves, um, breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Right? So it's just bringing that moment to moment awareness right there, knowing in that moment you're connected to yourself. So your feet are on the ground, or you can lean against a wall and feel the support of the wall, or lie down on your back. It's just feeling that connection. That's enough.
Beautiful. Is that what keeps you coming back to the practice? Is these moments where the practice is helping you get more grounded and lessening the anxiety or other intense emotions? Is there something else that keeps pulling you back to the practice of yoga and mindfulness?
I think that's the main thing that pulls me back, is just knowing that it is something that helps me feel grounded, feel connected. It also makes me feel part of a community, even now when we're having to do, yoga through Zoom
Yeah.
and not in person. There's still, we're all practicing together, and it never feels competitive to me. I
Mm.
know, and teachers will always remind you, whatever your body is giving you today, that's where you are. And so that brings me back all the time. And honestly, it feels good once you get to shavasana, or relaxation, for those of you who don't really know what that means. But once you get to that part of the practice, which is at the end of every practice, where you get to kind of collapse into yourself on the floor and just rest, you just feel all the effects in that moment. That rest is the sweetest rest I've ever felt, because I've done all this work and my body and mind feel, clearer and lighter, and I can just kind of let it all go. So that brings me back. Some days I just want to be in shavasana for the whole time.
Is it that experience that you have, is that helpful in any way when you're working on a writing project or you're teaching?
Definitely, definitely, because so I mean, as a lot of people, I have a tendency to um, maybe get frustrated with myself,
No
or
way.
right, not be so nice to myself when I'm
Yes.
writing and it's not happening the way I want it to, or maybe I'm frustrated about something, or when you're teaching and there's a lot coming at you with different people's emotions and feelings and experiences, and just having
Mm.
that ability to breathe, to give yourself that kind of pause, that kind of space to respond versus reacting,
Right.
knowing that I'm allowed to step back. So if I'm having a tough time writing, the practice, the things I've done in my practice, the things I can do in that moment, um, can allow me to notice if I need to step away for a minute, or I need to rethink, or I need to let it go and start the project again the next day. When you're teaching, obviously you can't walk away, but you probably know this because you're always teaching, that it at least gives you a breath, gives you a minute to just process what's happening. Um,
Yeah, I think,
you
what
can
I
approach
heard.
it differently, right?
Yeah, approaching it differently, that perspective. And also, what I hear you saying is that the practice of yoga and mindfulness it has increases your self-awareness and impacts your awareness in a way that you see things that you didn't see before. And something I really want to speak to here is, you mentioned, when you're teaching, you're around a lot of different emotions, whether you're teaching 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 20-year-olds, above, etc., that there's just there's a lot of emotional, there's a lot of emotional energy being exchanged
Yeah.
at any given time in that room, also virtually. Okay, so yes, in person, but it also happens virtually. And I think, what you're describing is that the practice of yoga and mindfulness has impacted you to become more self-aware, that you can navigate and say, oh wait, I'm not liking the way something is feeling right now. So maybe I should change the way that I'm moving about the room, or saying what I'm saying, or maybe not doing something in a certain way. And I think that's so powerful, because many of us that don't yet have that self awareness, and it's something that all of us are. It's not like we just ultimately say, hey, I have self awareness and I don't need it anymore. I mean, it's always a growing,
Yeah.
infinitely growing thing. But when we have more of it, we can, make more empowered, choices in how we're doing whatever we're doing, whether it's writing or teaching or parenting or talking to ourselves when we're working on a project, that we can choose to show up in a different way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was going to say, and you said it, in terms of parenting, it helps me so much because it allows me to see when I'm projecting my own fears or whatever
Mm,
onto my kids versus dealing with what they are experiencing. It gives you that sort of
right.
distance or that new perspective. And it's the same with teaching. If you have a child that you're engaging with in a classroom that's difficult, that the situation is problematic, um, learning to kind of become self-aware and to take those moments, take that breath, kind of process what's going on, can allow you to have more empathy, and then
Mm.
instead of seeing that child as a problem child, really seeing the situation, and maybe that child's needs are different than what you thought they were,
So
and it's you
true.
that needs to readjust a little bit. It's not the child. So it really allows you to kind of have that perspective and that empathy, and try something else.
That is so powerful. All these hard moments that we're perhaps, projecting. It doesn't mean every moment's like that, but especially, I love the example you gave with parenting. And then this also happens in many instances when you're teaching, that what is this person trying to show you in this moment? And I swear I had this happen yesterday.
Mm.
I was having a moment like before we started recording, I said, I feel pretty good today. I was not there yesterday. And I had this moment. I have a teenager, he's 14, and we've been in the house for a while, at school, teaching at school, he's learning at school. This is pretty much how we play, work, it's all here.
Mhm.
And I felt like this need to really connect with him. I have been feeling like that. And then he just hasn't been feeling that need like I have. And I just had this moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of freaking out about it,
Oh my gosh, I
yesterday.
can completely relate to you with
Yes.
that.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think, and what I learned from that was, I felt anxious about, this new kind of reality that we're living in. And I wasn't like, I really needed him to connect to me as my son, because I just needed to feel, I don't know if it was just needing to feel needed and connected, mother child, in that moment. But and I was trying to understand, like, okay, I get you don't need this right now, but I'm telling you that I do. It really led to a great conversation, because I had the awareness to think, like, what is going on with me? Is it just that I want him to do this thing? No, like I've had that deep desire, like we really needed to spend that time together.
I think actually you kind of, captured what part of what I'm experiencing today, because I have three teenagers in the house,
Oh,
and they
Lord bless you.
are, oh my gosh. And, so the last thing a teenager wants to do is be stuck in the house with his, his or her parents,
I
right?
know, right? It's
I mean,
torture
and
for
now
them.
they have no choice. And, you're constantly sort of trying to navigate, like, or at least for me, my own anxiety and fear about what's going on. And then not really letting that spill over into their lives, but also making
Yes.
them understand that it's serious. So when they keep saying things like, I want to, when can I go see my friend? That you have to be
Mm.
able to say no and not yet and explain all of that. But I just before you and I connected, I texted my son who's in the next room to let him know I was on a podcast and not to come flinging the door open. But also, I said to him, I'm really feeling the need to be with you today. I'd really like it if you just came and sat with me. We don't even have to talk to each other. Just be in my space. I need it right now.
Mm.
And yeah, so I know it's what was going on or what is going on with me, and
But
I
that's so
love to see
powerful
that.
that,
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's powerful that, that we can open up and grow into those conversations to, let our kids know, whether they're our own kids or in the classroom, what we need in the moment, because that's how they're learning to communicate ultimately what they need, you know
yes,
and like I told my older one, I said, like, I get you may not need this time right now, but I do. And I'm not asking for a lot of time. And, so it was a sort of this lesson in empathy as well.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Not that I appreciate that you had the experience, but I don't feel so alone. Like, what am I doing
Yeah, no,
here?
I'm so glad you shared that too, because I think it helped me kind of articulate what was going on, what is going on with me today as well. But I think you're right also, and I think that's one of the things that the practice has helped me do is also, if I can be more self-aware and sort of understand my experience, then I can share that experience. And as
Mm,
you said, it's so important in the classroom, at home, whatever, to be able to say, this is what I need, and to show that it's
yes.
okay to ask for what you need or to express what you need. Or, you don't have to give every personal detail, obviously, but
Right.
if you're in a classroom, you can say to your class, I'm having a tough day today. This is
Hmm.
what I need. Or, and maybe that allows one of them to then open up and share what they're experiencing. So I think it's really important to be human and allow yourself to say what you need. And
Yes, 100% agree. I mean, it definitely helps open them up to see how to articulate it. And it almost gives them, I don't know what other word to use. And it's unfortunate. I think I have to use this word. I think of like permission, because I
yeah,
just don't feel like we have it. I think because of just how social norms typically are. I mean, I know that just recently I was talking about, like, when if you ask someone how they're doing, and you always get the I'm good, I'm fine, and I think like, how do we get past that, like, how are you really doing? And
yeah.
giving them the permission to just, like, okay, this is how I'm really feeling right now, and I can just be here with you in this conversation at the same time.
I'm finding that during this particular moment in time with the pandemic and all of the, inability to be physically in someone else's space, that at least and I'm very grateful for this, at least in sort of my circle or the people I'm interacting with online, that nobody's hiding anything. Like everyone is
Mm,
being very upfront about their emotions lately, which I think is really nice.
yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm definitely finding that. And again, I feel like it's happening a lot in sort of my yoga mindfulness circles, and maybe that's, I don't know what that means, but I feel like people are we're just not holding back right now.
I love that. I love that you're having that experience. You're seeing people open up a little bit
Yeah.
more. I think about kids right now and what's going on, and also like kids have this undeniable presence about them. Especially the young ones. I don't
Mhm.
know about teens right now, but I love them for sure.
Yeah.
But kids have this undeniable presence, and there's just so much that they don't know about the emotional and social terrain. What do you hope that they'll understand about and perhaps experience while practicing yoga and mindfulness, either through story, through your books, through the actual practice of it? What is it that you hope that they get?
Well, I hope, I mean, kids have, obviously they have a wide range of feelings and emotions, and they may not be able to articulate them or even know what's really going on. But I my hope is that through one of the beautiful things about practicing with kids, is that you can really tap into their imagination
Mm,
and their creativity, and I think that creates a safe space for feeling
yes.
emotions. So what I'm hoping and what I'm wishing for in all of my books and my interactions with kids is that they feel that they're in a safe space, whether it's in the book or in reality, but also that they kind of understand, or that they do understand, that whatever it is they're experiencing is okay.
Mm,
It's something we all feel.
right.
They're not alone. And then through the practices, the yoga, the mindfulness, they kind of can develop that self-awareness, just noticing the signals in their body, and
Mm,
also, again, then using that word permission, but giving themselves permission to take a moment, be kind to themselves. They
right.
understand how to pause and and sort of cultivate that same self-awareness that we're talking about. I mean, it's
What
kind of big, it's a tall order, but at the same time it's not. The hope is that it's broken down so simply that it's kind of like they don't even know that this is really happening. That, oh, they're suddenly becoming aware of all their emotions and all their feelings.
No,
And
that's
but
so powerful what you just said, because I remember, someone a while back was being interviewed on a podcast, and they were asking about my teen and how he navigates this whole yoga and mindfulness. And I thought, it's different for him. He kind of grew up with this, whether he wanted to or not, in so many ways. And that it just becomes, and what's funny, and your teens may be like this, but mine's like, whatever my mom does, I'm not going to do. So
yes, mine are exactly like that. Thank you very
so
much.
that's how mine is. And I'm like, oh, how funny you say these things, but yet you are some of those things already. You're
Mhm.
just not having that self-awareness piece yet, because it's so part of who you are. You don't even realize how that has been, practiced and like wired into you,
Yes.
because at one point you did, right? So it's so interesting, and I think it's super powerful and just amazing, like your books with the creativity, the imagination, the play, that kids can access these deep, philosophical concepts, and have this experience in ways of being that they then become that thing. They become that calm, that peace, that kind, that awareness. And whether they're 14 and forgot that that's what they did, in time they'll come back to that moment and along their own journeys, but that's embedded in who they are, and they're out in the world being that. So that is a beautiful thing in action.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And you're absolutely, I mean, I have the same experience with my teens. So they grew up with all of this stuff and now they're at a place which is perfectly natural to be kind of rejecting everything about their parents and
Yeah.
figuring out their own way of being. So, if I'm doing yoga, that is not what they're doing. However, they already embody, and I see it, and I laugh inside because they already embody yoga and mindfulness. I mean, I see them taking deep breaths. I see them,
Mm.
when I start to spiral sometimes, and one of them will come over and say, Mom, just breathe, and it's like, oh,
And
you
that's so
are
powerful,
actually,
Susan. And I want to emphasize that for just a moment. So anyone listening out there that may have a teen, and like forcing never works, everybody's on their own journey. But at the same time, if you're taking on these tools, it is so powerful. It has such a great impact on those around you. You just might be surprised that that teen may come back to you and say, "Hey, why don't you just take a mindful moment or a deep breath?" I mean, you never know. So I think how we show up too is really powerful.
absolutely. And and again, like that means that it is okay for you to sometimes lose it. It is
Oh,
okay for
yeah.
you to make mistakes, and and actually give your child, especially your teenager, the opportunity to say, hey, why don't you take a breath, that kind of thing. I mean, they have to see you being self-aware and practicing all these things, but they also have to see you being a fallible human who,
Not perfect, right?
right,
Like just
and messes
because
up, and then, right, so they see you mess up, and they also see you forgive yourself, and they also see you, apologize, and they also see you take accountability. I mean, it's all of those things. So nobody has to be perfect in any of these areas.
imperfectly perfect as we are. No, I appreciate that point. I want to shift kind of back to this current reality that we're living in. And I remember for me processing this post COVID-19 world, thinking like I couldn't articulate it at the time until I thought, "Oh my gosh, there's pre-COVID-19 world and post-COVID-19 world." I was like this really defining moment in our history, in our human history, in our life, and that has created a lot of acute stress everywhere, whether you're able to articulate it or not. um, I know that we're feeling it because I know that some of us are distracted, we're moody, we're a little bit more irritable. What can parents, kids, educators, what do you think they can do, or maybe what are some things that you're doing to manage and process some of these intense thoughts and emotions that may be arising for many of us at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many, and it changes from day to day how you feel. I mean, I can physically feel when my nervous system is buzzing, and I'm just
Mm,
like, even if on the surface I'm sort of calm and we're sitting here having a conversation, I still feel that sort of agitation in my system. Um, I think, what I'm finding helpful. So doing the things, or a thing, something during your day that makes you feel normal, right? Whether it's
mm,
having your tea at whatever time you would normally do it at Starbucks, have it at home.
mm.
Doing your yoga class on Zoom, doing some jumping jacks, stepping outside your door, because I'm noticing that if I stay inside all day and I don't open the door, I forget that it's not the apocalypse in my backyard. It's
Right.
actually spring, and there's birds and trees, and so there are these pieces of normal, quote unquote, or beauty, or things that are continuing, that make you feel a little comforted. I also think finding community, finding people to talk to, even if you're in the house with all of your family, reaching out to someone outside of that circle, making you feel connected to the outside world. I think that's really important. And then just knowing that you're not alone, that we are all experiencing this. And so taking that breath, right? Taking a few moments to just sit, be, and breathe, and know that what you're feeling is okay, is exactly what everyone else is experiencing. And like everything else, it will, it will pass, and then it will come back, and then it will change. And
Right.
just recognizing that. I mean, of course, these practices for me, that's what is helpful for me, my meditation, my yoga, my writing, those things, but it can be different for everyone. So just making sure that you take that little bit of time for yourself, especially if you're a parent or a teacher, and you're trying to keep it all going. It's really challenging. I can't even imagine what these teachers are going through right now.
Mm.
Um, and so remembering you are just as important as the people you're caring for. And so you need to take 5 minutes just for you. Shut the door, turn out the lights, whatever it is, just for you.
No, those are so great. Such great reminders, particularly, the community piece. Even though we can't, get together like we normally would at a social event right now, it's temporary. It won't always be this way. Is that we can create these alternative ways of being together through Zoom or some other way, and just to get creative, just to feel and not talk about what's going on, or
Right?
maybe you must talk about what's going on, maybe it's a healing space just to
Right.
release, but whatever way, just to make sure that you do experience that form of connection, I think is key. And I
Yeah,
appreciate you
I
for
agree. It's so important, that connection, because I think the most isolating thing is not connecting, even if we can't physically be there. Just being able to, like we're doing right here on Zoom, or what FaceTime, or whatever it is. You've got to have some kind of outside connection.
Yes. No, thank you very much for that. Susan, what story of hope and promise, perhaps from your experiences and writing all the amazing books that you've written, or perhaps from teaching, or both, or going around to different schools, sharing your story, talking about your books, can you share with the listeners today as a kind of healing balm within the collective loss and grief that many of us are feeling? Is there a story of hope and promise that has come across your way, something that's been inspiring, maybe, that you've heard a school do, and it just really just lit your heart up with all this sparkly fairy dust possible? Or,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think there are actually quite a few, because much of my work, I'm writing, and I have all the books, and it's wonderful. And then there's that other piece where I get to go into schools, right? So I'm always sort of in the classroom and connecting with teachers and kids, and seeing what's going on. And I'm missing that. That is a big piece that I'm really missing right now. But having been a teacher, and now watching what teachers are doing with their students, it's just I mean, I've just
With
been
the virtual
so,
classrooms?
yes, with their
Yeah.
virtual classrooms. Just the fact that they can get up every morning and teach virtually to their children. And I know how much they physically miss being around their kids. I mean, as a teacher, your kids become your kids.
Mm.
So
I
I
get chills all over you just saying that. It's so
yeah, they
powerful.
are. And I see, I've gotten so many emails asking permission to read the books, and which, by the way, everyone go ahead and read and share and do whatever you want. Um, Publishers are saying do whatever you want until all of this gets back to normal in June or whatever it is. Just don't, you know,
Yes, thank
don't
you.
worry. But I can't. It's just I see what they're doing, and I hear what they're when they email me and ask for permission to read the books to their classrooms online, and whatever, the other pieces that are in the email, the other things that are like, I'm struggling here, we're trying, I want to give my kids support emotionally. I think it's so important. Every email, I want to support my kids emotionally. I need to make sure they're doing okay. And all the fact that they can get up every day and do just that, to me, is incredible, and fills me with a ton of hope, because I know that these kids are still being supported, and there are still people out there doing the work, and it hasn't been abandoned in light of
Mm.
everything that's going on. And I have to say that the kidlit community, all the authors and illustrators and publishers and everyone, have been incredible with all of the read alouds that they're doing and all of the things they're offering teachers and classrooms and kids and parents. I mean, I'm seeing so many examples of these types of communities kind of banding together to, instantly saying, what can we do? Okay, this is the situation. What can I do? Instead of pulling away, even though they're having their own anxiety, their own fear, their own whatever it is, they're still showing up. And that's the most hopeful thing to me. If you can show up now when this is going on, you're going to show up later, and the kids are going to be okay.
Ah, I love it. Yeah. I mean, you just gave me, the chilly willies, as I like to say, when you described. I know so many educators, and I know if you're out there on social and listening to what other educators are saying and doing, it's pretty miraculous. That their physical classrooms have been, overnight turned into virtual classrooms. And like you said, it's very hard, not because, not being in the physical space together, because magic making is there. That's that energetic exchange. And even though you have some of that virtually, it just can never replace that
Yeah.
physical, energy that's created in the classroom. But until then, I know many out there will still show up with love and dedication and commitment to helping those that they teach, lead, and serve, within the classrooms. I appreciate you sharing that
Well,
story.
yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me. It just, now is the opportunity to just crawl in, under your covers and sort of wait it out.
Yeah.
And, people are not doing that. They are stepping up and they are showing up. I mean, obviously the healthcare workers are out there just
Yes.
risking their lives every second of every day. But, those are the things that fill me with hope. And actually, my daughter the other day was having a little bit of an anxiety attack about all the things that are going on, and it was very overwhelming. and
And
i
she's a teen, right?
and she's a teen, she's 14, and I said to her, I'm like, look at all the people who are stepping up and showing up. This is how we know we're going to get through this. You have to just recognize that that is happening. So not everything is falling apart. People are actually banding together to push through, to push forward, to make it work, to get better. So and I need to do it too. I need to remember and to look at that. I guess it could be very sort of cliche and go back to Mr. Rogers and how you, in times of crisis, look for the helpers, right? But
I love
that's
that.
what's happening. And so these are the things that, if we can take a moment to acknowledge, it can at least give us some hope and help us see that there is going to be an end to this.
And that's a great focal point. I think, reminding ourselves, because it's so easy to get lost into a negative kind of news cycle in our heads, and to stop and just to say, wait, where can I focus on that light, those that are helping, those
Mhm.
that are rebuilding and reimagining, and putting your energy there is really empowering.
And I think if you're looking for something to do, as kids, um, I think some of these amazing meditations, we know that your energy spreads, right? It
Yes.
spreads to everyone around you, even far away. And so if kids can do these practices like loving kindness meditations, or any kind of well-wishing meditation, they can feel empowered, like they are also doing something to help, because they're sending out that beautiful energy, and they're also sending it to themselves. So they're supporting themselves and the people out in the world. And I think that gives them some way to feel powerful or empowered to do something.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I, since you mentioned it, I just want anyone listening, if they're wondering, what's loving kindness meditation? And it's just a real simple practice, for those out there listening, they're like, yes, I want to try that, where you can just sit and say, these mantras to yourself, that I am peace and I am love and I am strong. And then you extend that out to someone maybe in your household, like maybe your mom or your dad, like my mom is peace, my mom is love, my mom is strong. And you can send that out into the world. The world is peace, the world is strong, and the world is love, etc. And you say that a few times, and you create that positive energetic exchange within yourself and others. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, thank you for explaining it. That was lovely.
Yeah, no, I thought I didn't want anybody out there wondering, oh, that
Yes,
loving
no, you're
kindness.
right. I should.
No, I thank you so much. So we're winding our time down, and I want to do our rapid fire. This
Okay,
is
I'm ready.
fun. I've had so much fun the whole time, but this one is also really fun because I get to ask these big life questions,
Oh
and you
boy.
can imagine we're like in a Greek cafe drinking our next favorite cafe mojo, and then whatever word or phrase comes to your mind, you just say that thing. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Okay, I'm
All
ready.
right, let's dive in. All right, what do you believe?
I believe that we are all connected. That we're all energy and we're all connected.
What are you grateful for?
Oh, so many things. Family, friends, my breath, my life, um, the goodness in people, and yeah.
Beautiful. What sustains you?
Um, Triple shot, venti,
Yes.
not fat lattes,
We were
books,
channeling the same energy. I was like, coffee, tea.
coffee for sure, books, laughter, my children for sure, um, and my practices. Those things.
Beautiful. Last rapid fire. You are on Mindful Living with Athea Davis, and I love to ask all my guests, what does mindful living mean to you, Susan?
Mindful living really means just being present in your life. Um, Aware doesn't mean being perfect, doesn't mean always doing the right thing or always being the greatest human being on earth ever at every moment. It means just being present, being aware, being able to notice, pause, and then let things go. So
Mm,
that's what, and really be just in the moment, wherever you are, just in that thing, in that place.
I love it. Reminds me back to the very beginning of our conversation with the feet on the ground and
Yeah.
just taking a breath and appreciating that. Well, last question. I want people to connect with you, to buy your amazing books, and share all the great yoga and mindfulness love. So, where can people buy your books, find you online, and connect with you on social media?
So I absolutely recommend going to your local independent bookstore if you want to find any of the books. They should have them. They should be able to order them. Going on, always supporting your independent bookstore.
Yes.
That being said, you can also go to Amazon. Um, and you can also go to my website to find out more about me and the books and where to buy them and all of that, which is just susanverde.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Susan Verde, Twitter at Susan Verde, and on Facebook as well. And I'm doing twice a week, I have an IGTV channel, and I do some 5 minute, 6 minute meditations for kids, teachers, families. So they're all up there on Instagram. And that's where you can find everything.
Thank you so much for your time, your heart, your insights, wisdom, your energy, all of it. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you're doing. And I actually feel much better now. So thank you.
Yay. Hey there, and welcome back to the other side of my chat with Susan Verde. You have been listening to episode 61 here on Mindful Living with Athea Davis, helping our kids cultivate peace, love, and empathy. All right, now I know that you're going to go stock up on all of Susan's books. They are great. There are a few on here that I don't have in my personal library yet. I am excited about the newest version of the I Am One, a book of action coming out. I do have, I think, all of the I Am series, and they are amazing. They're great. My students love them. I love them. And as you heard Susan, she does some readings and some, meditations for teachers and students a couple of times a week now. So make sure to check her out, check her IG channel out. And I would love for you to take a moment to rate and review the show. It really makes a huge difference in, just getting the mindful love out there. So I really appreciate it if you go to iTunes, leave, just a quick rating and review. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Mwah. That's my kiss to you, my virtual hugs and sparkles to you. And I would so appreciate it if you screenshotted this episode and any of your other favorite episodes and tag me at Athea Davis, ATHEADAVIS. So at Athea Davis, tag me out there on Instagram, Facebook. You can shout me out on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm in all the places. And use the hashtag Mindful Living Podcast. That's with one L, Mindful Living. So one L, Mindful Living Podcast. And thank you so much for tuning in. I so appreciate your listening ears. I hope you're taking care of yourself, staying safe, staying well. Hopefully you're not going too stir crazy, but if you're looking for ideas, to keep you busy, to keep your kids busy, to deepen your relationship with peace, love, and empathy through the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not sure when you'll be listening to this, but I think this pandemic may be going on for quite some time, particularly the psychosocial and mental, emotional impact for quite some time. So these books I do think will be a special sparkly elixir for any of you out there working with kiddos, whether you're in a school, at home, at a church, at a camp, however you're working with the kiddos, I promise you're going to find so much value in these books and a great way to start cultivating these very important, traits that I think are foundational to our children's success in the world. Again, thank you for tuning in. I love you. I'm voting your victory, as I, love to remind you to tune into and spread the awesome sauce here, there, and everywhere. If you've left me a rating and review, thank you. If you've tagged me out there, thank you so much. Don't forget to. And if you just want to say hi, follow me on social media. I'm always posting out there, in all the places, IG, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. I'm trying, y'all, trying to figure that one out. And I'd love to connect. So until next time, keep the sparkle bright, y'all. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Mindful Living Podcast with me, your host, Athea Davis. Think of me as your extra sparkly, good vibes, and no-nonsense guide, reminding you to take intentional action and choose to be the person today you want to become tomorrow. The world needs your sparkle, your joy, your gifts in action. Speaking of, I have a free gift for all my podcast listeners. Go now and subscribe to my email list and get your free health and wellness guide, Awesome Sauce Insights, at soulsenseyoga.com. And take a moment to rate and review my podcast on iTunes or wherever you may find yourself listening to Mindful Living with Athea Davis. I truly appreciate your time and feedback so I can continue to deliver valuable content to each of you. Until next time, have an awesome sauce day, friends.